Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating explainer on a topic that gets to the absolute core of what drives organizational culture. We constantly hear about mindsets, corporate values, and vision boards, but the source material we're analyzing today reveals a hard, systemic truth about what it actually takes to sustain performance. Okay, let's dive into this.
So why do great culture initiatives fail? I mean, you've probably seen this firsthand, right? A company rolls out this beautiful, shiny new culture initiative. Everyone nods along in the town hall meetings. The intent is fantastic. The new behaviors are clearly defined. But cut to 6 months later, and absolutely nothing has changed. It's incredibly frustrating.
While the common myth is that people are just, naturally stubborn, that they're actively fighting the change. But the research clears this up with a pretty stark contrast. It is rarely resistance from the people. The real culprit? It's misalignment in the system. People aren't naturally fighting you. They're just responding rationally to the environment they work in.
Let's move to section 1 and see how this builds. The system always wins. Behavior follows design. There's an incredibly powerful quote in the material here, and this is absolutely the crux of why behaviors fail to stick. It says, when systems contradict cultural intent, the system prevails and behavior reverts. Think about that for a second. It literally doesn't matter how inspiring the leadership messaging is. If the underlying mechanics push people the other way, well, the mechanics win every single time. Because without that structural reinforcement, new behaviors just fade out. Ultimately, people respond to what is measured, rewarded, approved, and tolerated. If your culture deck says one thing, but your bonus structure rewards something else entirely, well, your people are going to logically follow the money and the metrics, not the mission statement. And this brilliantly illustrates our next point. Section 2. Two tales of misalignment, theory versus practice. Let's look at our first scenario. Imagine an organization where the cultural intent heavily promotes collaboration and enterprise-wide thinking. Sounds great, right? But then look at the reality of their management systems. They have completely siloed incentives. Performance is measured purely at the functional level, rewarding only individual or departmental outcomes.
So the result? It's entirely predictable. The system reinforces local optimization, not enterprise outcomes. Leaders might stand up and verbally support collaboration, sure. But when it's time to actually execute, they're going to logically optimize their own units. Why? Because that's exactly what the system pays them to do.
Okay, let's look at a second example. Picture a company demanding calculated risk-taking. Be bold, move fast, they say. But contrast that messaging with their actual day-to-day working reality. Lengthy, painful approval processes, intensely scrutinized failures, and performance reviews that heavily penalize any short-term dip in productivity. Over time, people learn a very simple, very rational lesson. It is safer to avoid risk. So innovation just slows to a complete crawl. Despite all those inspiring emails from leadership, the system effectively trains people that taking a risk is dangerous to their career. Again, behavior always follows the system. Which brings us to the solution phase, section 3, identifying critical system flaws, the leader's task. So how do we actually fix this? Well, the reassuring news is you don't have to redesign the entire company overnight. Instead, leaders need to look at these specific key systems: performance management, incentives, decision rights, governance, and talent management. These are the gears that create the actual working environment. Each one sends an unignorable signal about what leadership truly values. So the crucial point is, leaders simply need to ask themselves where these signals contradict the overall strategy, and then follow 3 targeted steps. 1, identify the critical misalignments, like which systems are reinforcing the wrong behaviors. 2, find the inconsistent signals where your priorities are clashing with your processes. And 3, make small adjustments. And I really want to emphasize that third step, because small changes genuinely have a massive impact. Tweak these specific gears. Shift your metrics to include shared goals. Clarify decision rights to avoid bottlenecks. Actually reward the behaviors that support the strategy. When you do that, doing the right thing suddenly becomes the easiest thing to do. Now let's look at the ultimate goal here. Section 4, achieving organizational coherence, aligning for success. What happens when we finally get all of these organizational elements perfectly in sync? The source material defines this as coherence.
It's that moment when leadership behavior, defined critical behaviors, and management systems are fully aligned. It's not just one or two things working well, it's all three locked together. This alignment is the ultimate requirement for sustained performance.
Because when you achieve coherence, execution becomes embedded in how the organization operates. Success no longer relies on sheer willpower or, constantly exhausting leadership messaging. The organization just naturally moves with clarity and consistency. But of course, that leaves us with a massive, lingering question. How do you make this change stick permanently? We've built the perfect machine, sure, but what happens when people actually take ownership? Well, in the next explainer in this series, we're going to unpack engagement, adoption, and why true ownership is the final piece of the puzzle. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for joining me as we explored this material, and I'll see you next time.